Welcome to the Intercourse Show. I'm your host, Mr. B. Today we have a very exciting show for you. We are updating you on the latest developments in the Iran war. It is the third week of the war and still no ceasefire, still no de-escalation, still the fighting continues. So with that said, we will be updating you. We follow a news source it's a third-party news source based out of India called First Post, and we'll use some of their footage to kind of describe some of the developments here because we feel it's a unbiased sort of take on what's actually happening. You know, in our media, things aren't exactly told to us the way it should be. So that's where I think the onus is on us to find different sources that can actually give us stories that we're not being told by our own media. So with that said, let's go ahead and jump right into the latest developments in the Iran war.
It's week 3 and day 17 of the war, and the big headline is this: no signs of de-escalation yet. If the Americans wanted a quick win, they're not getting it. Yes, a lot of Iran's capabilities have been hit, but the missile and drone barrage continues. Today, Dubai was targeted once again. Iranian drones hit a fuel tank. This was near the Dubai airport. It triggered a fire and a cloud of smoke. The attack halted operations at the airport. Multiple planes had to be diverted to other locations, but later in the day, flights resumed partially. And it wasn't just Dubai. 2 other locations in the UAE were also hit. In Abu Dhabi, a missile fell on a car, killing 1 Palestinian. And in Fujairah, drones hit the oil exporting facility. Fujairah was struck over the weekend as well. Huge plumes of smoke were seen over the facility. Operations were halted for a while, but reports say oil loading has resumed at the port. Iran fired 6 ballistic missiles at the UAE today. That brings the total to 304 missiles since the war started. 304 missiles aimed at the UAE alone. Other Gulf states also reported barrages. Drones were intercepted over Qatar, Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia. So Iran's strategy remains unchanged in week 3. Keep hitting the Gulf states. At the same time, Israel is also being targeted. We saw this last year too. Israel easily repelled the first round of attacks, but as the war dragged on, more missiles got through. Some reports say Israel is running low on air defenses. Apparently, the interceptor stock is critically low. Yet, the attacks on Iran continue. In the last 24 hours, Israel has hit at least 3 locations in Iran: the capital, Tehran, Tabriz in western Iran, and Shiraz in the south. Huge explosions were seen across the capital. More than 1,400 people have been killed in Iran so far, and nearly 20,000 civilian buildings have been hit. This includes schools, medical centers, and cultural sites. Over in Lebanon, it's a similar situation. Israel is striking locations in the Lebanese capital Beirut, and also in southern Lebanon. Nearly 800 people have been killed so far. A ground attack is also underway. Israel is calling it a limited operation, but chances are this could lead to a larger invasion, a bid to take over southern Lebanon. Meanwhile, the US is pushing heavy bombers into action. They have deployed the B-1 and the B-52 aircraft. Both are used to drop heavy payloads over military targets. So that's the military situation. What about diplomacy? Donald Trump says the US is already talking to Iran, but a deal to end the war has not been reached yet. Iran, though, has rejected this claim. They say no talks are happening with the US. They have vowed to fight as long as necessary.
They want to negotiate. They want to negotiate badly. I don't think they're ready. Just from what I'm hearing, they want to negotiate badly, as they should. But I don't think they're ready to do what they have to do. But I think they will be ready at some point. Yeah. We're talking to them. But I don't think they're ready. But they get pretty close.
We have not sent any message, nor are we requesting a ceasefire. But this war must come to an end on the condition that it will not be repeated. I think by now they have learned a good lesson and understood what kind of nation they are dealing with, one that does not hesitate to defend itself and is ready to continue the war wherever it may lead and take it as far as necessary.
There are two possibilities here. One, Iran is just trying to present a brave front. Behind the scenes, someone is talking to Trump. That's one possibility. Or two, Trump is sending out feelers to the regime. He's making it seem like Iran and not he wants to de-escalate. It's impossible to say which is true, but as things stand, the pressure is mounting on Donald Trump. He faces two main challenges. First is the Strait of Hormuz blockade. It is clear that Trump does not have a strategy to reopen the strait. He's asking other countries to do it for him. And second is the pushback at home. This war was never popular to begin with, but now the true costs are coming out. The US military has spent $12 billion so far. $12 billion on this war so far. That's $12 billion in 2 weeks of fighting. It may not sound like a lot for a massive economy like the US, but do remember, no one knows how long this will continue. If they fight for 100 days, will the US spend $100 billion? How would that look amid rising inflation and healthcare costs? Whether Donald Trump admits it or not, he is on the clock, and that's what Iran is counting on. Their goal is to inflict maximum damage on the US and its allies and make them think twice before attacking again. For Iran, public support is not an issue. Their key issue is their capability. How much longer can they sustain this missile and drone barrage? Wars cost money, but this one is costing the Gulf almost everything, it seems. Their oil revenues have frozen, their tourist bookings have been cancelled by tens of thousands of people, and air defense bills are running into billions of dollars. The war is bleeding Gulf economies. And Goldman Sachs has put a number to it, 14%. That's how much the economies of Qatar and Kuwait could shrink this year. 14% is a significant figure. Other Gulf states like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Iraq have also been hit. The last time they suffered damage on this scale was back in the 1990s when Iraq invaded Kuwait. It was in the early 90s. When that war broke out, global oil markets went into free fall, and now we are seeing a repeat of that. If this conflict continues through April, if oil supplies remain disrupted for 2 months, Qatar and Kuwait will lose 14% of their GDP. What about Saudi Arabia? They stand to lose around 3%. The UAE could shrink by around 5%. That is the estimate of Goldman Sachs. Saudi Arabia and the UAE will suffer less because they have the infrastructure to reroute some of their oil exports. But they cannot rewire the entire supply chain, so their oil revenues will also take a beating. Now remember, oil is the biggest source of cash for Gulf countries. So far, they've lost more than $15 billion due to the war because they're not being able to sell their oil. $15 billion. Saudi Arabia alone has lost some $4.5 billion. Same with Kuwait and Qatar. They have declared force majeure on their energy contracts. Now, force majeure is a legal clause. It allows these countries to suspend oil contracts. When circumstances are beyond their control, when they cannot make oil deliveries, they can suspend contracts. It's like a legal lifeline. Kuwait and Qatar are trying to protect themselves to avoid paying penalties because of the war. But this is short-term protection. If the oil business remains shut, the losses will keep mounting. And countries like Iraq are the most exposed to this because 90% of Iraq's revenues come from oil, 90% of the revenues. If oil stops moving, the Iraqi state can virtually come to a standstill. Basra is one of Iraq's main oil hubs, and reports emerging from there are quite stark. Their storage facilities have hit maximum capacity. They cannot store any more oil, and production has been reduced drastically. Earlier, Basra was churning out 3.3 million barrels per day. Now the production has come down to 1.3 million barrels of oil. That's a cut of 60%. So the loss of oil revenue is the biggest shock. But it's not the only economic fallout for Gulf countries. The second major blow is the cost of defense. Iran has been striking them with drones and missiles. To defend themselves, these Gulf countries have deployed missile defense systems. And these systems are not cheap. Most Gulf nations are using the Patriot system. It is one of the most advanced air defense systems in the world. It uses missiles to shoot down.
Make it a habit. 7 minutes of Tai Chi every morning, all the way for 1 month. In 1 week, you'll feel better. In 2 weeks, you look better. In 1 month, your wife won't believe your results. Here's a Tai Chi workout plan, made for men over 50. These beginner-friendly exercises take just 7 minutes a day. Tai Chi is the best medicine for men over 50, and it's a key to long-lasting health and vitality. It's more than a workout. It's a game changer for your life and longevity. Just open the app and follow along.
Times more than what Iran is spending on launching attacks. In Kuwait, they've spent. It is one of the most advanced air defense systems in the world. It uses missiles to shoot down drones. But this is a very expensive system to fire. One interceptor missile costs anywhere between $3 to $5 million. One interceptor missile, $3 to $5 million. One Iranian drone costs less than $50,000. So Gulf countries are spending $4 million per missile to bring down a $50,000 drone. And the bills keep piling up. Take the UAE, for example. The UAE has spent anywhere between $1.3 to $2.6 billion on air defense alone. Up to $2.6 billion. This is 13 times more than what Iran is spending on launching attacks. In Kuwait, they've spent between $800 million to $1.5 billion on air defense. Qatar has spent $600 to $900 million. And these costs will only rise because Iran is showing no signs of easing the attacks. So that is the second fallout, the rising cost of defense. The third fallout is from tourism. The Gulf has spent decades building itself into a global travel destination. These cities were designed to attract the world. But now that revenue is under severe strain. West Asia's tourism industry is losing big money, about $600 million a day. And the losses stem from a range of sources: the closure of airspace, flight cancellations, the drop in tourist arrivals. All of it adds up. You could say the war is following a predictable path. It begins on the battlefield and creeps into the balance sheet. And this damage will take much longer to recover from. Is Benjamin Netanyahu dead? That's what the internet has been saying. Yes, seriously. If you scroll through social media, you will find hundreds of posts claiming all kinds of things. Some say the Israeli prime minister has been killed in an Iranian attack. Others say he's hiding. And still others say his videos are AI deep fakes. These are videos that show Netanyahu alive. The internet says they're fake. It sounds crazy, but that's the thing about wars. Misinformation flies faster than missiles. Here's how it started. A strange video was circulating online. In it, Netanyahu appeared to be speaking. Take a look.
We are crushing the nuclear infrastructure of Iran, the missile and launcher array, the repression headquarters, the regime centers of power, and many more targets.
People noticed something bizarre. His hand looked wrong. In one frame, it appeared to have 6 fingers. Now, if you followed AI-generated images, you know that this is a classic giveaway. Artificial intelligence often struggles to generate hands correctly, especially the fingers. They struggle with the fingers. So the internet did what the internet always does. It jumped to conclusions. Maybe the video was fake. Maybe Netanyahu was not even alive. Maybe Israel was using AI to pretend that he was still around. And within hours, the rumor spread across thousands of accounts. That's when Netanyahu responded. His official social media account posted a new video. It showed him at a coffee shop in Jerusalem Hills. He raises both hands to the camera in this video to show 5 fingers on each hand. And then he jokes, "I'm dead for coffee."
What did you ask me?
Prime Minister, people are saying online that you're actually dead.
I'm crazy about coffee. You know what? I'm crazy about my people. The way they're behaving, fantastic. Do you want to count the number of fingers? You were? Very nice. Cheers.
Well, this video was meant to quell the rumors. It only fired them up further because people immediately began analyzing this clip. They went through it frame by frame. Some pointed out that the coffee is always at the same level. It doesn't change. Others said that the lip movements look unnatural. Some even claim that brown coffee stains appear and disappear in the video. In some frames, you can see the stains around his lips. In others, they're missing. People clearly have a lot of time. And then there was the AI assistant Grok. It added fuel to the fire. Grok suggested that the clip may have been AI-generated satire. Basically, Grok called it a deep fake. And that made the rumors explode further. And now there's a third video. It shows him interacting with civilians. But even this has not satisfied the internet. They say his ring keeps disappearing in the video.
השתגע מזה.
שמע, אני זוכר את זה.
אתה זוכר? קוראים לו גיא.
זה היה במטוס, אתם יצאתם קצת להתעורר.
יצאתי קצת להתעורר. כמובן שיש מרחב מוגן, זה במקום כזה.
מרחב מוגן? איפה, את יודעת?
ממש שמה, בטח. א' ב' זה לבדוק.
כמה צעדים מכאן, נכון?
כמה צעדים.
יופי, זה הכי...
If you're still wondering, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu is alive. But the thing is, wars are the perfect breeding ground for rumors like these, especially wars in the age of social media and AI. We know that Iranian media outlets have threatened Netanyahu. So have their military groups. They say they would hunt him down. In such an environment, information becomes a weapon. Fake videos, manipulated clips, psychological warfare, it's all part of the battlefield now. And Netanyahu fits perfectly in these plots because they align with his political story. For decades, his politics has revolved around one theme, and that is Iran. For more than 30 years, in fact, he has been warning the world about Iran, about its military goals, about its nuclear achievements, about the need to bomb it, to decapitate the Iranian regime.
Ladies and gentlemen, time is running out.
This Iranian regime is giving Hamas the rockets, money, and the political and military backing. Therefore, if we want to end the threat of rockets from Gaza, there is no escape from uprooting the Iranian regime, Iran's regime in Gaza.
Iran's completed the first stage. Took them many years, but they completed it, and they're 70% of the way there. Now they're well into the second stage. And by next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage.
From the Caspian Sea to the Mediterranean, from Tehran to Tartus, an Iranian curtain is descending across the Middle East. Iran spreads this curtain of tyranny and terror over Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and elsewhere. The Iran deal, the nuclear deal, is based on lies. It's based on Iranian lies and Iranian deception. 100,000 files right here prove that they lied.
He's made a career out of targeting Iran. And on February 28th, his wish came true. For the last 17 days, the US and Israel have been doing just that, bombing Iran. And it shows you the Israeli Prime Minister's insatiable appetite for war. It's like conflicts are his business model. He thrives on it. He has been Prime Minister of Israel for over 18 years. And out of these, Israel has been at war for over 1,000 days. That's nearly 3 years. In 2023, they were fighting the Hamas in Gaza. Last year, they had a brief war with Iran, and now they're at it again. So how does it help Netanyahu? Well, it's the perfect distraction to keep him in power. You see, Netanyahu faces multiple corruption charges, including bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. But when the country is at war, legal proceedings are put on the back burner, the trial gets delayed. And that's not all. Elections, too, get delayed. Israel is supposed to vote by October this year. And when the country is at war, when it feels threatened, voters tend to rally behind strong security leaders. And that's how Netanyahu has pitched himself. In politics, war can be a powerful shield. It rallies a nation around its leader. And for years, this has been one of Benjamin Netanyahu's crutches. War has helped him reset the political clock. But there is a limit to that strategy. So maybe the real question hanging over Israel today is not whether Netanyahu is dead. The question is whether his politics of permanent war can survive.
Before we progress to the next story, I think it's important to weigh in here. As she just mentioned, it is very true that Benjamin Netanyahu, is, a controversial leader, to say the least. But, it's evident that there are certain laws that allows him to remain in power, provided as long as the country's always at war. And some people are saying that this is his tactic to remain in power because there's a lot of things going on with his leadership being questioned at home that would most likely result in him not being in power if the country wasn't at war. So I'll let you kind of decide what you think is true or what you think is not true. But she just laid out a stat that I thought was pretty interesting, is that out of 18 years of him being in power, they've been at war, I think she said like anywhere between more than 10 times, probably closer to 13, 14 times, where there's constantly a conflict. And I think the problem is this is what's causing a rift between the people within the GOP, is that there are people that knows that Israel's conflicts ultimately is our conflicts. And that for the people that don't want war, we don't want to be influenced by those conflicts. So you have a lot of people who, is cautioning the president to steer clear of taking on every conflict that Israel finds itself in. The question is, will the president listen? So far, it doesn't seem like he is. It seems like he is aligned with doing Israel's bidding on this front. And, the verdict is still out as to how that will affect him politically. But that is sort of at the heart of the controversy, is Benjamin Netanyahu's leadership within Israel.
We all have a Donald Trump in our lives, someone who wants you to clean up their mess. Except in this case, the mess is a global energy crisis. Now, most of us knew that Iran would shut off the Strait of Hormuz in a war. It was always going to be their trump card. But reports say the US government did not prepare for this. They did not think that Iran would go that far. Well, newsflash, they have. So what is President Trump's new plan? He doesn't want to clean up the mess himself. He wants others to do it for him. Over the weekend, Trump posted this message. Let me quote. Hopefully China, France, Japan, South Korea, the UK and others that are affected by this artificial constraint will send ships to the area so that the Hormuz Strait will no longer be a threat by a nation that has been totally decapitated. Trump wants to create a naval coalition. He wants countries to send warships to the Strait of Hormuz. For what? To escort commercial ships through the danger. And how many countries have agreed? So far, 0. Australia has said no, Japan has said no, Greece and Germany have said no, so Trump is raising the stakes. He's asking NATO countries to join this Hormuz coalition. If not, he says NATO will face, and I'm quoting, a very bad future. Still, no one is budging. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is calling for a credible shipping plan. He made it clear that there would be no NATO mission.
We are working with others to come up with a credible plan for the Straits of Hormuz to ensure that we can reopen shipping and passage through the strait. Let me be clear, that won't be, and it's never been envisaged to be, a NATO mission. That'll have to be an alliance of partners, which is why we're working with partners both in Europe, in the Gulf, and with the US. It's important that we continue that. It is not straightforward.
This would not be a NATO mission. That's what he said, and NATO is unlikely to change its position. European countries will want to see the hostilities end first. Only then will they consider escorting ships. Otherwise, the risk is immense. One drone or missile could drag them into this war, a war that they're not interested in, a war that they did not start. But here's a more important question. Why does Trump want help? Look at his social media post on the 8th of March. I'm quoting, "The United Kingdom is finally giving serious thought to sending 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East. We don't need them any longer. We don't need people to join wars after we've already won." How about that? In 1 week, week 1 of fighting, Trump did not want help. He said the war was won. But in week 3, he's openly asking for help. And shockingly, no one is agreeing. Before this coalition request, Trump had another brainwave. He directed his attention to the commercial ships. He asked them to, and I'm quoting, he asked the ships to show some guts. Basically, brave the missiles and drones and sail through the strait. Now, just to be clear, the US Navy has not entered the Strait of Hormuz. Their warships are stationed outside the Gulf region. That is how dangerous the situation is. But Donald Trump is asking commercial ships to make this dangerous journey. No defenses, no weapons, no armor. He's asking them to undertake a suicide journey. Again, it's the same playbook. Create a mess and ask someone else to fix it. He's doing the same to American media, by the way. Trump feels the war coverage is not positive enough. On Saturday, he lashed out at multiple US media outlets. He accused them of peddling fake news. On cue, the US regulator jumped in. He threatened to cancel the broadcast license of several news outlets. If that wasn't alarming enough, the president escalated. He threatened some US outlets with treason charges. I'll repeat that for you. A treason charge for war reporting. Yet the gatekeepers of democracy are silent. No criticism, no outrage. And remember, we're talking about the US media here. They have always defended American wars. Yet Trump has a problem with them. We saw the Secretary of War raise similar concerns. That's the American Defense Minister. He had some suggestions for reporters.
For example, a banner or a headline, Mideast war intensifies, splashing on the screen the last couple of days, alongside visuals of civilian or energy targets that Iran has hit, because that's what they do. What should the banner read instead? How about Iran increasingly desperate because they are. They know it, and so do you. Another example of a fake headline that I saw yesterday: war widening. Here's a real headline for you for an actual patriotic press. How about Iran shrinking, going underground?
Classic attempts at headline management, anything to evade responsibility, basically. Trump's military struck and killed more than 150 children in Iran. Yet who is at fault? The media for reporting it. Trump's advisors did not plan for the Hormuz closure. Yet who is at fault? The commercial sailors who refused to sail into a war zone. Also, the US allies who advised against this war in the first place. The fact is, this is Donald Trump's mess. Like we said before the war started, he owns it. The rising energy prices, the rising casualties, all of it can be traced to the US president's decision. He started this war. He must deal with the consequences.
Again, I have to weigh in here. She's right. That last segment is 100% correct. And it does show the contradiction on Trump's part. Trump made it seem like he was going to be able to go in, strike Iran, take them out. He thought the people were going to rise up and overthrow the government, and he can just place a leader that they thought was favorable in that as the leader of that particular country. He got the wrong information. This is what's unfortunate. As a guy who's rooting for Donald Trump to win and to be a good leader and to help the country that so believed in him and help him come back from all the political attacks he was facing, this is a disappointing moment for him. This is one of the things that I considered as a voter before I pledged my support, because he said he wasn't going to go into wars, especially not wars in the Middle East. And somehow, some way, he got himself caught up in something that was political suicide. And I think there is a degree of desperation on the part of Donald Trump, because the Democrats won't even fund Homeland Security to provide ICE services, ICE officials to take out the illegal immigrants out of the country. As this war is bleeding more and more money from the United States, they're not going to fund it, especially since there is not an official declaration of war. This is exactly what the Democrats was looking for to make Trump look bad. And he walked right into it. This is a self-inflicted wound. Whoever was advising him knew that such things would take place, but they didn't care, because guess what? The buck stops with the leader. Trump can't deflect to someone else. It's going to fall on his name. So every day this drags on, there's going to create more of a strain between him and the Gulf partners that he has. They're losing billions of dollars every day. Their countries are under attack. And I'm pretty certain they advised Trump not to do it, because they didn't want any of the attacks to be launched from their countries. Yet he did it anyway. And in so doing it, he made it seem like it was a quick operation, to be in and out. Yes, you can destroy somebody's country. You could take out the military base, but that doesn't mean the bigger war you've won, because there's still an element where they're going to cause you much more harm financially in your pockets the longer they drag it out. And all these guys are doing is they're saying, we're not coming to the table. You've killed our leader of 40-something years, our spiritual leader at that. They don't want to hear no negotiation talk right And I totally get it. These people are emotional. The guy who's the next leader, it was his father you killed. You killed his father along with his family members. The guy's got vengeance in his heart. And the Iranian people are behind him. These people seem to clearly have enough capabilities to fight back, because despite the claims that we've taken out all of their weapons, they're still launching waves of attack on Israel. They're launching new weapons, and they still have enough capacity in terms of armament to threaten a whole Strait of Hormuz, and countries can't go through there. Now this lady just played clips that makes Donald Trump look crazy. It makes him look bad. It makes him look unprepared. Because when you're texting that the oil tankers should essentially grow repair and risk their lives going through that strait, when there's already evidence that the Iranians are serious about bombing people who attempts to go through that. And when the lady points out that our own military has not sent any Navy ships through there, it looks crazy. And I think that's what certain people who care about Trump was trying to get him to avoid. Don't make yourself look bad by entering into something that's going to stain you and your reputation. Now he's straining his relationships in NATO because those people are already on the fence with him. They're not big fans of Trump. They have to respect him because he's the leader of the new world. But these are all people who was really buddy with Obama's and Clinton and all those people. They're not fans. They're not rooting for Donald Trump to succeed. Now, when Trump has the leverage, they'll play ball, but these people are not volunteering their service members, their ships, their stuff to go on a suicide mission. It's not happening. I mean, that's very evident. These people, they're not about to go do that. So when you have a scenario where that's the case, it just makes him look bad. And again, as a Christian, I'm praying to God, because God holds the heart of a king in his hands. That's a promise in the Bible, that he removes the scales from Trump's eyes and he sees that a continuation of this is not in his interest. It is not in his party's interest, and he pulls back. I don't know that my message will ever get to him, but I'm sure rational people will eventually have a conversation with him to say, this is not the way, bro. A peaceful solution is the better way forward. Continuing to dive deeper and dig deeper into this, where we're talking about sending ground troops, where we're talking about escalating the matter and potentially using more powerful weapons, is not the way. And these guys have the air protection saying that they're defending themselves from a preemptive attack launched by the US and Israel. So public sentiment is favoring them because their whole point is you surrounded them and you defended them. They didn't shoot the first shot. That's what they're going to say, and that's how it appears to the world. And it's just a bad look. I mean, I don't know why Trump would take this on, but he's taking it on, and it's a bad look. Hopefully he can get it right, but let's continue.
And now it's time for our top videos of the day, the most important verified videos coming out of this war. And we stress the word verified because right now social media is flooded with all kinds of clips. Explosions, missile strikes, dramatic footage, a lot of it is fake. So every day we go through hundreds of videos, checking sources, verifying locations, and separating fact from fiction. Our video number one tonight is from Khurramabad. This is a city in western Iran. Thousands had gathered on the streets here. They were marching with Iranian flags, marking the 15th day since the killing of their supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Next, we come to military firepower. Every side is showing its might with curated videos on social media. Because clearly, fighting on the battlefield is not enough. You have to show it. We'll start with Israel. It has released videos showing its supersonic stealth strike fighters, the F-35I, flying towards Iran. Iran too has been releasing videos. This one shows the 54th wave of missile attacks. It is part of what they call Operation True Promise. And this is the first time Iran used its solid fuel Sejil strategic missiles, better known as the dancing missiles. We'll tell you more about them later on the show. For now, take a look at the video. The US was not far behind. It released videos from the USS Abraham Lincoln. It's a 5th Nimitz-class nuclear-powered aircraft carrier. Right now, it is sailing close to Iran. The videos show back-to-back jets taking off from the carrier. For video number 5, we have something different. Countries are sending humanitarian aid to Iran. One of them was Turkmenistan. Footage shows lorries carrying medicines, clothes for children, and food. So those are our top videos, but the internet is flooded with more than just war videos. I'm talking about fake news. Like this video. It talks about an attack on an Indian oil tanker. Of course, it did not happen. Even the government has fact-checked it. Another fake video shows a US Navy ship on fire.
Hey, another one that's tearing the side open. Secondary blast, look at fire. Burn the bag. Moving now. Here it goes. Firing. More incoming direct hit. Popping on the other side.
This did not happen. But you see how dangerous this is. For every real video coming out of this war, there are dozens of others that are completely fake. Clips from old wars being recycled, video game footage being passed off as real missile strikes. Artificial intelligence is generating hyper-realistic explosions, and within minutes, these videos spread across social media. Experts call it the fog of war. Governments are now taking this threat very seriously, like the UAE. The United Arab Emirates has arrested 35 people for spreading manipulated war videos online. As it happens, 19 of them are Indians. Some of them shared edited clips of missile interceptions. Others used artificial intelligence to create fake explosions and strikes. Some even recycled footage from other countries. And they claimed that this was happening in the UAE during the war. Now, under the law in the UAE, this is a crime. Spreading such misleading content can lead to prison terms and heavy fines. So the message from the authorities is quite clear. In times of war, misinformation is not just a social media problem. It is a security problem. It can create panic. It can expose security capabilities. It can even influence how people around the world perceive the conflict, which is why verifying what you see has never been more important.
For this segment, I actually have some commentary. What we've been seeing is that a lot of countries abroad has made it illegal for any one of their citizens to broadcast any type of footage of explosions or any damage being done in their area, then they're essentially facing jail time for doing so. Now, that makes me question, would our government take a similar approach? As you can see in the prior segment, she was showcasing how the Secretary of War was making suggestions as to what headlines should read and actions that the government was taking against certain news publications for broadcasting the wrong information or information that they don't agree with, or using a headline that doesn't align with what they're saying. Does that then mean then that the U.S. will now take measures to attack people that's showing unfavorable footage of this war? Is that a trend that will continue to pass on from those countries to the United States? I hope not, because in our country, we do value freedom of press and things of that nature. So I would hope that that's not a measure that's taken, but one can only wonder, given, some of what we've been seeing in terms of trends around the world, one can only wonder if that's yet to come in the U.S. So, food for thought.
The effects of this war can be felt across the globe. Oil prices have been surging. We've been telling you about this on the show. Governments are scrambling. Countries are suddenly telling people how to use less fuel. Many governments are implementing all sorts of measures like 4-day work weeks, fuel rationing, monitoring AC temperatures, even using stairs instead of the elevator. Some anchors are taking off their suits on air. Our next report brings you more.
This crisis began as a war in West Asia, and it is now rippling through the global economy. To understand this crisis, we need to start with a narrow stretch of water in West Asia, the Strait of Hormuz. It looks small on the map, but it carries about 20% of the world's oil. Every day, tankers loaded with crude oil sail through this corridor. They supply fuel to Asia, Europe, and beyond. But the moment fighting broke out in late February, that route suddenly became dangerous. Within days, the impact showed up in the numbers. Global oil prices shot up. Brent crude jumped from about $70 a barrel to over $100. But here's the thing about oil shocks. They don't stay in oil markets. They spill into every part of daily life. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. Across Asia, governments are suddenly asking people to burn less fuel. In Vietnam, officials have urged companies to allow employees to work from home. Why? Because Vietnam's oil reserves can last less than 20 days. That's barely 3 weeks of fuel security. In Pakistan, the government has taken a more drastic step. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has introduced a 4-day work week for government offices, and half the workforce is being asked to work from home. Less commuting, less fuel burned. Meanwhile, in Thailand, civil servants have been told to save energy in unusual ways. Raise air conditioner temperatures, use stairs instead of elevators, and even relax office dress codes to cope with the heat. Some anchors even took their suits off on air.
Let's just take it off so we can set an example of how to save energy too. By wearing less clothing, it can help with our moods and the coping with the weather. Some people who are addicted to cool air conditioners, well, now you don't have to.
In Sri Lanka, the government implemented fuel rationing to conserve the country's fuel stock. That led to long, snaking queues at the fuel pumps.
The rationing of fuel will not have any effect on the economy. The way the war is being conducted, we don't know when it will end and whether supply routes will get blocked. We are doing this to be prepared in case there is a crisis situation in the future.
And while Asia is scrambling to save fuel, other countries are doing something else. They're opening their emergency reserves. In Austria, the government is releasing oil from its emergency stockpile. In Germany, authorities are limiting how often gas stations can raise fuel prices, only once a day. The goal is to stop panic price spikes. Meanwhile, some countries are better prepared. In Japan, oil reserves could last up to 150 days. In South Korea, reserves stretch close to 200 days. And in China, stockpiles are enormous, roughly 1.2 billion barrels, enough for over 100 days of imports. Beijing has already ordered state energy firms to stop exporting fuel to protect domestic supply. So the question now is simple. Will this crisis get worse, or will it fade away? If the Strait of Hormuz could remain unstable, this could turn into the world's next energy shock. So what we are witnessing right now may be the early stages of a global oil crisis. Countries are cutting work weeks, businesses are trimming meals, delivery workers are losing jobs, and governments are dipping into emergency fuel reserves. All because of a war thousands of kilometers away. And until the guns fall silent in West Asia, the world's fuel supply will remain on edge.
The war is also becoming a testing ground for some of the world's most advanced weapons. Iran has just deployed a new ballistic missile in combat for the first time. It is called the Sejil missile, but experts have another name for it. They call it the dancing missile. Do you know why?
Okay, in the last segment, we're talking about the cost, the rising cost of oil. I just did a Google search on the pricing, and it seems like it's up to $114 a barrel. So that is having a significant effects on the market. And again, you know, we can only hope that this situation comes to an end soon, because the trend is that the price will continue to go up. So, you know, I pray that we're able to actually find a resolution, a peaceful resolution to this war rather quickly.
Because it can maneuver mid-flight. That makes it extremely difficult to intercept. Tehran fired the dancing missile for the first time yesterday. It has a range of about 2,000 kilometers, which puts much of West Asia within its reach. But here's the thing. Iran is not the only one testing new weapons in this war. The US and Israel are also using new systems. Our next report takes a closer look at them.
A new missile has entered this war, not quietly, but with a message. Iran has unveiled one of its most advanced weapons on the battlefield. It is called the Sejil. Military experts often call it something else, the dancing missile. The first time the missile has been used in combat, and its arrival sends a clear signal about how this war is evolving, because this missile was built to be difficult to intercept. The Sejil is one of Iran's most sophisticated ballistic missiles. It has a range of roughly 2,000 kilometers that allows it to reach targets across much of West Asia. But its real advantage is not just the range, it's the fuel. Older Iranian missiles rely on liquid fuel, which requires preparation before launch. The Sejil uses solid propellant instead. That means it can be fired much more quickly, moved easily, and hidden until the moment of launch. The missile has another feature that has drawn attention. It can maneuver during flight. That movement makes interception more difficult for air defense systems. It is this ability that earned it the nickname Dancing Missile. Iran began developing the Sejil in the late 1990s. The first known test took place in 2008, followed by another in 2009. Later tests showed the missile could travel close to 1,900 kilometers. For years, the weapon appeared mainly in military drills. Now it has moved to an active battlefield, and the Sejil is not alone. Since the war began, Tehran has relied heavily on missiles and drones in its retaliation against the US and Israel. One of the most widely used systems is the Shahed 136 drone. It is a one-way attack drone designed to crash directly into targets. Iran has also deployed missiles such as the K-Bar Shekan, Khorramshahr 4, and Ghadar 110. Some are designed for long-range strikes. Others carry heavy explosive warheads. In some attacks, missiles have also carried cluster munitions. These weapons burst mid-air and scatter dozens of smaller bomblets across wide areas. But Tehran is not the only side introducing new weapons. This conflict has become a testing ground. The United States has deployed the precision strike missile for the first time in combat. It is a new long-range system fired from HIMARS launchers. Washington has also introduced Task Force Scorpion drones. These are low-cost, one-way attack drones designed for battlefield strikes. Meanwhile, Israel has also deployed the Black Sparrow missile after years as a test system. And Israeli F-35 fighter jets have recorded the aircraft's first air-to-air kill against a manned plane. Then there is artificial intelligence. US and Israeli forces are now using AI-assisted targeting systems to help identify and prioritize targets. Algorithms are helping shorten the kill chain. So, taken together, these are not just battlefield developments. They are previews. This conflict is not only about territory or retaliation. It has become a live laboratory where the weapons of tomorrow are being tested today. And what works here will shape the wars that follow.
Now let's talk about gas supplies. This conflict is testing India's energy resilience. Over the weekend, there was a diplomatic breakthrough, Iran allowed 2 Indian ships to pass. These were ships with gas supplies. These ships crossed the Strait of Hormuz. One ship has already arrived in India. It's called Shivalik. It has reached the western state of Gujarat. This vessel is carrying around 40,000 metric tons of cooking gas. That's 1 day's worth of supply. But it's also a start because another ship is on its way. It should reach India tomorrow. Together, these 2 vessels are transporting 92,000 tons of LPG. LPG stands for liquefied petroleum gas. It's what most Indian households use for cooking. It comes in the gas cylinder in your kitchen. Now, most of our LPG comes from the Strait of Hormuz. It has been shut because of the war, so supplies have been blocked. Last week, there were LPG shortages in India because of this, especially for commercial establishments like restaurants. They had to ration their gas. They had to cut their menu items or shut shop. So have things improved now? Well, there are no new reports of major disruptions, and with some ships being allowed to pass, things may ease a bit. But these are stopgap arrangements. The supply chain is far from stable. India's Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas has issued a statement. It says the availability of LPG remains under close monitoring. The other option for cooking fuel in India is PNG, piped natural gas. As the name suggests, it reaches your kitchen directly through pipelines. As of now, PNG supplies are stable. The problem is PNG usage is limited to India's urban centers. Most consumers still rely on LPG cylinders, and a supply crunch will hurt not just Indian kitchens, but also factories. Some of them are already showing signs of strain, like the JSW Group.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Makers, at least one of its units faces a shortage. They've written a letter to the government flagging supply disruptions and their impact on the company's operations. The Indian Steel Association has also written to the government. They too have raised concerns about LPG supplies, especially from small and medium enterprises. They want the government to fast-track imports. Now remember, India imports 90% of its LPG needs, and 60% of this supply comes from West Asia. The shipping disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz have hit the supply. As of last Saturday, some 22 ships were stuck there. These are vessels with the Indian flag. They're stranded in the Persian Gulf. Among these 22 ships, 6 are LPG tankers. Together, they're carrying 270,000 tons of cooking gas. So far, Iran has allowed 2 of these tankers to pass. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has been leading the talks. He said a direct engagement with Tehran is the most effective approach right now. Jaishankar said it was these talks that had yielded results and that he had every intention to keep the communication channels open. The immediate goal would be to secure safe passage of the remaining 6 vessels, the ones carrying more LPG. They are being prioritized over the rest. But concessions rarely come without conditions attached, and this one may be no different. A new report is out. It says Tehran has made 2 demands, 2 conditions to let the remaining Indian tankers pass. The first demand is that they want India to release 3 tankers. These are not ordinary vessels. Indian authorities had seized these vessels in February. This was over serious allegations. Apparently, these ships had altered their identities. They were involved in illegal transfers at sea. Iran wants these tankers back. That's the first demand. That's what the report says. The second demand, according to this report, is for medical supplies. Iran wants medicines and medical equipment. Now, a source from the Indian government has denied this report, calling it baseless. They said that there has been no discussion of this nature with the Iranian side. That is where things stand at the moment. Either way, India should be able to navigate this. It is not party to the conflict. It has not picked sides, and it has old and deep ties with Tehran. So it makes sense to engage with Iran to secure our energy interests. As the war in West Asia continues to escalate, Washington is looking elsewhere, at Cuba. The island nation sits just off the US coast. It has been on President Trump's radar for weeks now. He calls Cuba a failed nation. And he has hinted at a takeover similar to that of Venezuela. The timing is significant. Cuba is facing a severe energy crisis right now. Power cuts are happening every day. People are protesting on the streets. But here's the catch. Donald Trump created this crisis. The US has sanctioned oil supplies to Cuba in recent weeks, and now it is using this as leverage. The pressure has brought Havana to the negotiating table, but if these talks fail, will Cuba be next to face Trump's wrath? Here's a report.
For days now, the world has watched the war between the United States, Israel, and Iran. But in Washington, a familiar question is emerging. What comes next? For US President Donald Trump, the answer may lie much closer to home. In Cuba, the communist-run island sits just 150 kilometers from Florida. And Trump has made clear it is now in his sights. In recent days, he has repeatedly signaled that Cuba could be Washington's next target.
Cuba's a failed nation. Cuba also wants to make a deal, and I think we will pretty soon either make a deal or do whatever we have to do. So I think something will happen with Cuba pretty quickly.
The sequence, according to Trump, is simple. First Iran, then Cuba. And the timing matters, because right now, Cuba is facing one of the worst crises in its modern history. The island is running short of energy. Fuel shipments have dried up, power plants are struggling to keep the lights on, and blackouts have become the norm. In some places, frustration has spilled onto the streets. Protests have broken out over electricity cuts and worsening living conditions. So what caused this? For years, Havana depended heavily on cheap oil from Venezuela. That supply helped run power plants and transport systems. But in January, the politics in Venezuela shifted. President Nicolas Maduro was captured by the US forces. Suddenly, Cuba's lifeline disappeared almost overnight. Why? because the Trump administration imposed severe restrictions on fuel supplies to Cuba from Venezuela. Havana says the island nation has not received petroleum shipments for months. The resulting shortages are now affecting transport, communications, and even hospital operations. But here's the thing. Even as Trump issues threats, Washington and President Miguel Díaz-Canel
consistente que ha defendido la revolución cubana en su historia.
Cuban officials have recently held talks with representatives of the United States government. These conversations have been aimed at finding solutions through dialogue to the bilateral differences we have between the two nations.
Washington has revealed few details about these talks, but U.S. officials say Secretary of State Marco Rubio is closely involved. And that involvement is significant. Rubio is the son of Cuban immigrants. Both he and Trump have made no secret of their desire to bring about a regime change in Havana. For them, this is more than just foreign policy.
And it may be a friendly takeover. It may not be a friendly takeover. It wouldn't matter because they're down to, as they say, fumes.
The U.S. and Cuba have been adversaries for over 6 decades. Since the Cuban Revolution of 1959, relations have been defined by sanctions, mistrust, and rivalry. For Washington, Cuba has long been viewed as a strategic concern just off its coastline. For Havana, the U.S. embargo has shaped its economic survival. That history makes the current moment fragile. If negotiations succeed, they could ease tensions and bring relief to an island in crisis. But if talks fail, Trump has already hinted at stronger action. He has shown in Venezuela and Iran what he is willing to do when diplomacy does not deliver. And that raises the question, will Cuba be next?
Okay, weighing in on this particular topic. For those of you who haven't followed along, the whole Cuban Missile Crisis happened because the United States were concerned that Russia may have been placing missiles on Cuban soil. So the United States, also in an effort to take out Cuba's president, was attempting to, I guess, do a regime change operation there. And it brought about conflict because Russia stepped in and there was a whole process that had to be de-escalated. I don't think it would be wise, given the provocations that Trump has already made, to invade or attack Cuba. Clearly, Trump is now doing the wish list of a lot of neocons who have always had these regimes on their target list. From Iran attack to Venezuela, now Cuba is part of the fray. And some will say that Marco Rubio is probably an instrumental voice at getting this particular agenda item pushed up on Trump's priority list. The problem is, I don't think it will be as simple. Now, there are measures that the United States has already taken to bring Cuba to a desperate place. I mean, if your people don't have fuel to actually heat their homes in the middle of the winter, that's not a good thing, you know? So obviously there's a level of desperation that those folks have. And it seems like their government has signaled some willingness to have conversation around what a fair compromise would be. But I do think there are certain buttons that we push that can potentially draw in other big powers like a Russia, who has a pact and a relationship with Cuba. I can't remember the exact timeline, but a few months ago, I think there was like a Russian nuclear power ship that was traveling to Cuba because they have some sort of relationship where, you know, they spend time. And so to me, given the series of events that's taken place over the last year or so, I think this would be a poor decision if Trump again created another conflict in Cuba. Not just from the standpoint of the U.S. standings in terms of how the U.S. is perceived around the world as a bully, but there is a very real possibility that a similar missile crisis like that existed back in the 60s could occur, where tensions are being drawn because, again, Russia has a relationship with Cuba, and probably a closer relationship with Cuba. So, again, I don't think it's wise for Trump to do anything to strain his relationships with other nuclear-powered countries, especially not while people are losing money, and it doesn't seem like a lot of our ally friends are out here trying to help us, and this is really kind of in defense of Trump. He did say that if the U.S. found themselves in a fight, that it would be unlikely that NATO countries would come help him. And I think that's what's happening here. He was right about that. So you got to say something about that. But in this case, I think those NATO countries are wise in that they don't want to be the target of attacks from Iran or other countries solely because the U.S. is unilaterally making decisions without their input and provoking wars that they are not in agreement with. So I can understand where the country exercises some discretion to say, hey, we weren't a part of this deal. You kind of wanted to go this alone, so we're going to allow you to go it alone. But the whole point is an attack on one of these countries is an attack on all of these countries. And if a U.S. base is being attacked, technically that should have triggered some sort of NATO reaction to the country that attacked them. But I guess that didn't apply here. So there is some credence to the fact that Trump says a lot of these countries wouldn't step up for us when, there's a conflict. I mean, I kind of understand that point of view. If you went by the letter of the law, NATO should be involved helping the U.S. Since we're clearly not going by that, I do think those NATO countries are within their right to say, hey, we don't want to get involved. So if they are able to do that, I think we should also be in a position to do that with the whole Ukraine situation and all the conflicts they might find themselves in the future. But my take specifically on the Cuba is that I don't think Trump should do it. I think he should relax. I think he should handle one thing at a time. And Iran thing is already a thing. It's straining. I read somewhere where Taiwan flagged concerns because there was a huge buildup of aircrafts and stuff like that China had, potentially bracing themselves for an attack. And this is where I think the U.S. is stretching itself thin. It's helping Ukraine in Europe. It's actively involved in a conflict in Iran that is costing it money and depleting its resources and armament. It's engaged in some military activities in its own hemisphere with Venezuela. And we still have yet to know how that might turn out. Right now, there hasn't been any major conflict, but who knows? As these South American countries see us get challenged and get depleted because we're being pulled every which way, is that going to prompt them to stand up for themselves and potentially uprise against, us taking them a good portion of their oil for our own self-gain? And now if he starts a conflict yet in the Caribbean, that's also another thing that could potentially provoke Russia to get involved further. So again, I don't think it's a wise choice, especially not now. It's one thing if you space some of these things out. I don't think it would be a wise choice for Trump to engage in any of these things. Again, there's a midterm about to happen in a year or so. And the moment he loses control of either the Congress or the Senate, impeachment proceedings are coming. And that's going to make the rest of his presidency a nightmare for him, because there's plenty of grounds that people could find to challenge him, especially because you have a desperate opposition party in the Democrats who's looking for anything to stick on to Trump. They already don't like him. Now he's doing things that the public can see, don't necessarily agree with, and that the public could see are legitimate reasons to challenge him. And he's picked fights with members of the Supreme Court and said negative things about them. So if he was in his administration was to be challenged and it rose to the Supreme Court, it's a good possibility, even though he placed some of those justices up there, that those who don't like him would side against him, thereby diminishing his powers to take on certain things or do certain things. I don't think that's what Donald Trump wants. To me, I think it'd be wiser for him to tread lightly here, take his time, maybe space out what he's doing, scale back on whatever he's doing abroad, regroup, and then make decisions that really cater towards the people. Plenty of people in the country is suffering, got real world issues that they need help from their government in solving. Trump taking on every gripe that what some would call the neocons have had should not be what determines his legacy. I don't think that's it for him. He was on a good trajectory. Standing up for those who are less fortunate is a good cause. Going to pick fights with Cuba and Iran isn't. It's not a cause that American people care much about. So personally, I don't think it's a good thing for him to do. Naturally, I'm not the president. He's going to do what he wants to do anyway. All I could do is pray, share my thoughts, and encourage, the conversation to take place. And also, pray for our leaders. Like, again, I don't want to see Trump fail as the president of this country, because if he fails, the country fails, right? If he makes decisions that cost money, that sends tax dollars abroad and wastes money in wars and innocent lives are lost, that affects the country. That affects the morale of the country. That affects the prestige of the country. I don't want to see that for the country. Love the country. I want to see Trump succeed, right? I want to see him stand up for the American people in the right way. I don't want to see him stain his own legacy simply because maybe he's getting bad advice. So, but we'll have to see how it all plays out. At this point, we're going to shift to the next topic. It seems like from Palestine to ICE. Apparently, there's some conversations that deviates from this, but it's talking about the sentiment of the people in the U.S. Let's go into that.
Our next story is about Hollywood and politics. Yesterday was the industry's biggest night. I'm talking about the Oscars. It's a night that is meant to celebrate cinema. But this year, films were not the only talking point. Global politics also took the center stage. From the red carpet to the Oscar podium, several celebrities used the moment to make political statements. Some spoke about the war in West Asia and Ukraine. Others criticized President Trump's immigration policies. A few also used their acceptance speeches to raise concerns over censorship and human rights. Our next report has more.
The Oscars are supposed to be Hollywood's night of glamour. Red carpets, golden statues, standing ovations. But this year, something else walked onto the stage: politics. At the 98th Academy Awards in Los Angeles, the celebration of cinema quickly turned into a reflection of a world in turmoil. Host Conan O'Brien warned viewers at the very start. He said the night could turn political, and what followed proved him absolutely right. Even before the ceremony began, the red carpet had already become a stage for protest. Among the gowns and tuxedos were political symbols. Some celebrities wore artists' for ceasefire pins, calling for a permanent end to the conflict in Gaza. Others wore badges reading "ICE out," criticizing Donald Trump's immigration enforcement policies. For many artists, the Oscars were not just about celebrating film. They were using the moment to speak up.
I don't have my lead actor with me tonight. He can't enter the United States because he's Palestinian. And there is a ban decided by Donald Trump to ban the Palestinians, so it's a bit sad.
But the red carpet was only the beginning. Once the ceremony started, the political messages moved onto the stage. While presenting the award for Best International Feature Film, actor Javier Bardem appeared alongside Priyanka Chopra Jonas. But before announcing the nominees, Bardem delivered his own message. He said no to war and free Palestine.
We are killing innocent people with lies by bombing them with a purpose created by a lie.
Other winners also used their moment in the spotlight to highlight global issues. The team behind the documentary, Mr. Nobody Against Putin, warned about the dangers of silence in the face of authoritarian power.
For 4 years, we look at the sky for a shooting star to make an important wish. But there are countries where instead of shooting stars, they have shooting bombs and shooting drones.
But the politics did not stop with just the speeches. It was also present in the films themselves. The night's biggest winner, One Battle After Another, tells the story of rebels fighting an authoritarian government that detains immigrants. Accepting the Oscar, director Paul Thomas Anderson reflected on the world being left to the next generation. He said he wrote the film for his children and apologized for what he called the mess they will inherit. Besides, even the host joined the conversation. Conan O'Brien took several playful jabs at world leaders during his monologue. In many ways, this was not unusual. The Oscars have long reflected the politics of their era to protest the treatment of Native Americans. In 2003, filmmaker Michael Moore used the stage to criticize the Iraq War. More recently, speeches about Ukraine, Gaza, and racial justice have become part of the ceremony. For supporters, these moments show artists using their influence responsibly. For critics, they risk turning entertainment into political theater. And this year's ceremony made one thing clear. Even in Hollywood, the world's conflicts are never far from the spotlight.
Okay, well, that last segment, my view on that is I'm not a big fan of Hollywood and what they have to say politically. They often don't align with my principles for living life. But again, this goes back towards this opposition voice that's trying to galvanize the population against Trump's agenda. They are not fans of his. They don't want to see him succeed. And any chance they can have to criticize what he's doing, they will take it. Some of the causes I think are just. I mean, obviously, the Palestine thing is a real thing, where kids are being bombed and insinuated and things of that nature. And, you know, I think that's a noteworthy cause to say, hey, let's stop the war, let's stop the bombing, let's find a peaceful resolution so that that doesn't continue to happen. But on other topics where, you know, they're provoking wars with, say, another nuclear power like Putin, and they're saying we should go fight for Ukraine and do all these different things and support Ukraine, that's where they kind of contradict themselves. On one hand, they're saying stop bombing these people over here. On the other hand, they're saying please bomb these people over here. It all equates to lives lost, and I don't particularly condone, you know, pointless wars where people's lives are lost. Peace across the board should be the standard, but Hollywood oftentimes contradicts themselves depending on whose agenda they're trying to sell you. So that being said, that wraps up the show for today. I thank you guys for joining me, and I ask that you like and subscribe if you're not already connected to the show, but also weigh in. I want to hear your thoughts about some of the topics we covered here. Where do you think this is going? Is there an off-road for Trump to exit from this war? Is there steps that he should take? Are we missing something? Is he on the right side of history? Is he doing something that needs to be done because there are legitimate threats? You guys weigh in. Let me know what you think. I, again, want to see our leaders win. I don't necessarily want to criticize our own leaders, but I do want to bring to light, what the public sentiment may be about what it is that they're doing, with the hopes that that may help them make better decisions for the people that they're elected to serve. So that being said, thank you guys for joining me. I'm Mr. B signing out. I appreciate you all, and have a blessed day until we meet again.